Hola, and welcome to another episode of Editing Cat Videos on TikTok. Wait, sorry, wrong video. Welcome to another video tutorial on Lightroom Classic. That's much better, although editing cat videos on TikTok could be interesting. In this video, we are going to cover using the spot removal tool. This is a very interesting tool, as you will see. It is located in your develop module. So let's get this thing going. I'm going to go into my Lightroom catalog. And if you were following along in the previous video, you may have seen in the virtual copy video, I created these two other versions of the original file here. That's why you see what looks like three versions of the same file. These are virtual copies. Okay. I'm going to go into the second one. Doesn't matter for you guys. Just pick one of these images that is back to its original. If you want, you can go to the any of these files, go into the develop module, and then you can just reset it. Okay. All right. And don't forget, it actually records the reset in case you wanted to step back in the history. So this is now reset, and if you are using this image, go ahead and reset it, because this particular demonstration involves an area of the image that needs to be seen. So you need to reset that image back to its original state. If you don't have this image, just follow along, or just observe this video and see how you can apply it to your images. All right, spot removal tool. You see this rock right here. I'm going to zoom in right now, and how I'm zooming in is I'm in the develop module, and I just clicked on an area, and it automatically went to the 100%. Depending upon how you were zooming in the previous your previous attempts to zoom in, it'll remember if you went to this other drop down here, where you can kind of sort of customize what percentage of zoom you want. So it kind of remembers where you went from last time. So I'm going to go to the 100%. I wanted to show you that there's this rock here. What if I wanted that rock to disappear, because it's kind of taking a little bit more attention than I want it to in this shot. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom that into 100%, maybe actually 50%. So you can see sort of a little bit of its surroundings. On the upper right, below the histogram, right next to the crop tool, and as again the crop tool is this square dotted line, right next to it is the spot removal tool. If you put your mouse over it long enough, you will get the tool tip title of that tool, the spot removal tool. I'm going to click on that, and notice, similarly to the crop tool, when you click on these tools, you will be given some options and be brought into this sort of submenu where you can select from. Okay, so let's talk about this. The first thing you'll see is the brush. In reality, you are kind of painting sort of like a mask, if you will. It's sort of the equivalent to something you would see in Photoshop. You're actually painting on your image, and you have an option of cloning or healing. I'll get into the differences between the two as we see in demonstration. So you have the cloning or heal mode. Then you have the size of your brush. Okay, notice that when I am moving this around, that circle on the left, it starts to get larger or smaller depending where I'm placing it. And there's also this feathering. If you haven't used Photoshop before, feathering is how soft or hard that brush is going to be. So if you notice, there's like two circles. There is an outer circle and this inner circle that seems to be moving back and forth. The outer circle is the actual size of the brush. The inner circle is the feathering. If you have zero feathering, that means the brush is very hard. It's just going to be very abrupt. If you put feathering in it, it's going to soften your brush, so a little bit more subtle. It's good for blending in. So I like to start out around 50 or so for the feathering. Okay. Opacity. This tells you how translucent or opaque you want the correction to be. Okay, I'm going to put it at 100%. So that means if I want to remove a spot, it's going to be gone at the 100% strength. And if you want something less than that, if you want to do some blending, then you could just decrease the opacity. All right. So remember, the goal for this one is to get this particular demonstration is to get rid of that rock on the bottom right corner of the image. So I'm going to zoom out of here for a second, and I'm going to put my brush over this rock right here. You may not see it, but you kind of want to get a brush that's bigger than the object you want to get rid of. So I'm going to increase the size of this brush to maybe 82. That seems to be much bigger than it, and it's okay if you kind of are going outside of the shot a little bit here. I'm going to click on that, and I want you to see what happens. I clicked on it, and in my screen, it picked this area to copy and paste over the rock. Notice how there's this dandelion here. If I zoom in here, it actually pasted that on top of that rock as well. Okay, and if you don't see this circle, then I want you to go down to where it says Tool Overlay, and I want you to select, Always. This will tell you that it'll show you where it's picking from to copy over your destination here. I can actually move this around. Right, this was my target, and I can move it around if I wanted to. Look what happens if I take it away. That's where the target was. I can bring it back down. Okay. When you do this, it doesn't mean that your Lightroom will automatically pick this, even though if you're using the same image as I am, it may go somewhere else. It may pick another spot. Okay. Notice though, if this was kind of a little bit too obvious of a copy. If anyone's looking at this, you'll see, why is this is the exact same dandelion as this thing. I don't want that, make it so obvious, so I can move it around and pick some other area to blend it in more. Okay. And this is where you can come in and play around with the feathering. Remember what I said about the brush? Feathering makes it softer or harder depending upon what you select. If I were to make this a hard brush, meaning remove the feathering, and I'm going to hide this tool. I'm going to go down here and I'm going to say auto, so it gets rid of it. Actually, no, I'm going to take my mouse away. So if I were, actually you really can't see it. I mean, maybe you might be able to see it in your screen. It's very subtle on this video, but there is kind of a hard edge around this circle here. And if I were to feather it, it kind of blends it in a little bit more. So that's where you would use feathering. It softens the edges of your brush. Now, in fact, I'm kind of going like 84 or 85% to make it much softer, much more subtle. Okay. Now, the fact that I'm using Heal, the difference between Heal and Clone is that Heal will take your target, in this case, I'm clicking on it now, and it's going to try to blend in its surroundings. It's going to copy some sort of source, which you can move around. Okay, you can, if you're not happy where it picks, you can always move this around. Lightroom is not going to necessarily pick the best source. You got to move it around. It's going to paste it, and if you're using the Heal mode, it's going to try and blend it in with its surroundings. So even though this is grass, the grass isn't green evenly all around. It might be some patches of yellow. Some parts are darker green than the others, etc. So what it's trying to do is trying to blend it in as best as it can with the Heal mode. If you were to use Clone mode, it's going to copy exactly the same tonality and paste it on there. It's hard to see it in this video, but and if I make it feathered, maybe you could see it. There, it's a little bit more distinct now. It's literally copying this tone and just dropping it on here, the same dark green. It's not trying to blend it in at all. Look what happens if I use the Heal it blends in the tonality much better. I'm going to go back to clone. You can see how it lightens up there because that's exactly the tone here, and heal will blend it in much better, right? So once again, when you click on a target, it's going to pick something it thinks will remove the spot for you, but it isn't always necessarily the best thing. You got to go in there and move it around. All right, I'm going to zoom out of here. Let's find another spot that needs to be handled here. In the center of this screen, there is that is not your monitor. That is a spot on my sensor. And because there's a spot on my sensor, it became a spot on my image. Okay, that was not a spot on my lens. It's actually on my sensor. It was dirty. So this happens on occasion. You may see this on your skies. If you shoot a blue sky or clouds like in this case, and if you see spots there consistently in the same place in every single shot, and you've carefully wiped your lens, your front and rear element of your lens, and you still see it, then it is not your lens. It is a spot on your sensor. So in order to get rid of this, you can use the spot removal tool. I don't need the size of this brush to be this big. I just need to cover that spot. I'm going to reduce the size of my brush, but instead of having to go here all the time and move this, if your mouse supports a vertical scroll, I know in Digipix, some of the mice have a wheel on top of the mouse. That wheel will reduce the brush size. It's very handy. You don't have to keep going over to the slider of the size, the brush size here every single time. You could just use your vertical wheel on your mouse. If you have one of those, then it'd be much more convenient for you to use this tool or a lot of tools in Lightroom. So I'm going to reduce it here, and I'm going to probably the only thing you can do is control the feathering. So I kind of have to kind of go back here at 50 here, and so I'm going to click on this, and then it picked some other place here, which is fine to me. It's a cloud. This is one of the easiest things to blend. That's good enough. It's gone, right? So I'm going to zoom out of here. Okay, so at any time you can have a bunch of these spots or these tool overlays everywhere. Let's say I want to get rid of some of these this darker patch of grass right here. I'm going to click on that. Let's see where Lightroom picks. That's not bad, right? So if I wanted to get rid of looking at this, you can go down here to the auto, or you can say never, and it won't show it. The shortcut to this, to reveal or to hide these tool overlays, and this is a shortcut that's going to be used in the other tools, is the letter H. H as in hide, or H again to actually make the tool overlays disappear. So the letter H to hide or reveal these tool overlays. And as I said, this shortcut H will be used again in other tools as we go along this class. So that's something to remember that you could use as a shortcut. But also, again, it's also going to be at the bottom right here under tool overlay. All right. So, and if I wanted to modify one of these, I can click this and make an adjustment. Or if I wanted to get rid of one, I click on one of these and just hit the delete key on your keyboard and it's gone. Okay. And remember, all these things are on your history. It remembers all your adjustments. Okay. And if you wanted to adjust opacity, let's talk about that right now. Remember, opacity is the amount of how translucent or opaque the effect will be. So if I were to make this, I'm gonna click on this so you guys can see the effect here. I'm gonna keep it at always. Notice that it's starting to appear now, the rock. If I put 0 opacity, that's not applying anything. It's just 1% opacity. The rock is still there. But if I were to increase it, it'll start to disappear. Okay. When would you use this? Sometimes you need to use opacity for blending purposes. Maybe you don't want to completely erase the target. Maybe it's sort of like a blending situation. Because completely erasing it may look fake, depending on what you're doing. You kind of want to use this opacity tool to kind of sort of make it a little bit more subtle. In this case, though, I kind of want the rock completely gone, so I want a lot of grass on top of that to make it disappear. Okay. All right, and that is it for spot removal tool. Oh, before that, before I go, for more information about that, it is actually in the book. Spot removal tool, starting on page 244. And actually a good example. In here it covers all these specular highlights on a car with all the reflections. And guess what tool they use? The spot removal tool to get rid of all of these reflections. And look at this before. And then look at the after. And this, of course, you're going to every single spot and doing it. Notice that you do not have to stick with just the circle shape. You can click and drag and create your own shape. What they're trying to get rid of is this part right here. Right? You can click and drag and it'll replace the target with something else. And you see potentially, look at all these spots all over the place. Okay. And here's the before and after. And that's it.